school committee meeting. It is 6:30 p.m. I see that David Sanders from Wilbraham Public Access Channel is recording. Is there anyone else here recording this meeting? Okay, we will begin with roll call in alphabetical order. Sheriff Carolina. Tim Collins.
Present.
Sean Kennedy.
Here.
Lisa Murray.
Here.
Rich Rediker.
You mentioned something about
Okay. Mike Cherabassi.
Here.
And Michelle Boudreau here. If you would please stand. Lisa will lead us in the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we do not have student representative this evening, so we will begin with the Assistant Superintendent for Finance, Operations, and Human Resources, Doug.
Good evening, everyone. I'm taking you through a couple different things. We'll start with the memo that I gave you regarding the current fiscal year and where we stand with regard to our budget. It's a memo and an accompanying spreadsheet with details of what's going on in the current year. The short story is that our budget continues to remain on track as we expect it to behave, and the unencumbered portion of our budget is about 4.6%. And so we have an anticipation that that will hold us through the remainder of the year. What we are doing at this point in the year is starting to see where certain areas of the budget really start to exceed what we anticipated, and others that are short of what we anticipated, and so we'll have to start to think about making sure that we've got reasonable understanding of why those things are spinning at a rate higher. So a couple examples I have in there are student transportation and therapeutic instructional costs that are above where we would like them to be at this point, where we expected them to be at this point. With regard to student transportation, the reason for that is we've got more students that needed specialized transportation. There's been some limitations on what LPVEC is able to do for us, and so we've had to hire outside contractors to help cover some of that cost. There are other transportation costs as well that aren't special education related that also play into that a little bit. But it is tracking above what we expected, so we'll hopefully have and be keeping an eye on other areas of budget that are under what we expected to help support ourselves in that area. With regard to therapeutic instructional costs, it's really a circumstance where we have some kids with higher than anticipated needs and needing specialized social emotional support, like RBT staff as opposed to just a paraeducator, and an increased request for psychological evaluations done by independent evaluators, so we had to pay outside people to come in and do those evaluations. And so both of those are pushing up the expenses in those areas a little bit. And I think if you want more detail than that, I'm going to have to defer to Josh Jitson to go into any more detail on that. Over the last few weeks, we've been pretty focused on preparing the budget, both for the roundtable as well as just getting refined information relative to our coming fiscal year, which I'll get into in a few minutes. But I'll pause here and see if there's any questions relative to this memo and the associated spreadsheet. All right, so next up in my list of things to run through with you is our capital request for fiscal 26. So this is similar to what you've seen in previous times, but I have gone through and refined it quite a bit. There are some things that got moved out of the fiscal 26. Went through with facility staff and others, and just there were some things we weren't going to be able to get to in a reasonable way and have good quotes for, and so we kind of pushed those out. Some things we've refined the numbers on, they've gone down, some have gone up. The short story is this, we do have some quotes, both sort of more formal ones as well as some experiential stuff. So for example, with our purchasing of let's see if wireless access points. Well, we bought some this year, so we have a pretty decent sense of what the price is likely to be for the coming year, and that's where we made our projection on that. And mini splits for classrooms. We did some installation of that this year. We have essentially recent history within our own accounting software that tells us what to expect with those costs. One of the biggest changes, the two biggest changes is the stadium seating project. We have a quote from from a vendor for the materials and installation. But there are other associated costs and there are other associated unknowns. So I've increased that number by virtue of a contingency of about 30%. One of the reasons for that is that it's a, the seating is aluminum. And one of the things that is in the current federal discussions around changes are tariffs, specifically around aluminum, so we don't know what's going to happen with price. The other thing with a project of that sort, we have permits to file with the town, inspections, design plans, and just general contingency. So we've boosted that number quite a little bit relative to the estimate for the materials and construction that was given to us. On the other hand, the cost for the camera system is decidedly less than what we had previously had in our projection. I don't know why it was as big a number as it was. I think it may have been originally considering maybe 2 schools, both the middle school and the high school, and then we did the middle school, so we didn't take that out. But we have, again, a quote from a vendor relative to that. It's a system that's, it parallels what we put into the middle school, it parallels what the town of Wilbraham has used in their police department. So I think there's a nice synergy and crossover of comparable equipment. But that's decidedly less. I did put a small contingency in that. The quote's from about a year ago. So there's about an 8% contingency I've added to that for 370, but that's like half what it was when we spoke last about this.
We had Chief Lennon come down to one of our meetings, yeah, he came specifically to talk about this and saying how important it was for the police department that we have this system in place.
Yeah, he reached out to me for the quote, and I shared it with him, and he sort of shared that with some others, and along those lines, I will be compiling those more detailed sort of quotes and information we have and have gathered to bring to the meetings on next week relative to capital, so that they have a little more firm understanding of where we're coming from with regard to these numbers. So I think that'll give them a little more confidence in what they are. Like I said, most of the numbers are based on either quotes that we have, conversations we've had with vendors about prices, or experience that we've had. And again, some of the numbers have come down considerably. I think the last time we had the sheet, it was at least, for Wilbraham, it was at least $2 million higher, maybe more. And so I think this is a reasonable ask, given the amount of capital needs we have, and I hope that you are willing to support moving forward with this, and then we'll see how the committee feels about it at the towns relative to supporting the specifics here. But I think this reflects what we need and things we can get done in the coming fiscal year. So I'll answer any other questions, but I think also there's we do need a formal vote of this as a capital plan to submit to the town as a request.
Do we want to do it all together at the end? Or?
Don't we want to look at it first?
This is the capital request. This is what he's asking for a vote for a
Oh,
motion. Just for this,
for the
not for the
capital
budget, we're
request.
not
Gotcha,
doing
not
the
for the
budget.
budget. Yep, sorry. Yep.
Only for the capital items.
I make a motion to approve the capital request for 2026.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Okay. I just want to make sure, is Rich on the line? Just I need to know if we need to do roll call. Can you see?
I can't see if he doesn't say specific.
Okay.
He said he was going to be late for stuff.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Okay, so motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
So now, good.
Aaron, would you like to take this there?
I don't know if everyone has a hard copy. It's better for visual projection. So while she prepares that, I'll just say, we'll take you through where we are at the present time with regard to the draft budget for fiscal 26, and kind of walk through where we are right now, and point out a few things, and highlight a few details that we have now that we didn't have in a while.
Sure. As we envision this presentation, we thought we'd like to start with highlighting some of the core values of the district, which the high school staff and others have worked really hard on in formalizing in the Nichog's vision of a graduate, which informs the work we do all the way through. I remember that when I first became a superintendent, someone said to me, well, I guess now all you'll be able to do is try to set the moral tone for the district, which kind of hurt me at the time, because I was like, you know, I did programming and stuff like that. But now I've realized that setting the moral tone is one of the most important things you can do. So our thought was that we'd begin with some statements around our North Star principles.
You go to the next slide, please. So this is where we were at the round table. So this is the same exact slide as was the case on the board. This is showing a projection of our staff with steps taken. So contracts that involve steps and COLAs. The steps have been projected in here for folks that did a step, but no COLA, 0% COLA across the board for all employees. At the time, the transportation costs estimated for them changed in our model from a 2-tier system to a 3-tier system. We had made a first rough draft of that. We had not gotten final numbers from LPVEC, so we were holding off on claiming it to be final. Our health insurance, we had an estimate of a 7% increase. We had a Hamilton County retirement assessment estimated at 8%. And so this is, like I said, where we were at that point with the 0% COLA, which is an increase of about a little over $1.8 million in total cost to the towns, and a little over 4. That's just going for me too. I'm sorry. This is 4.89%, but anyway. Again, this hasn't changed. This was what was there. So what has happened since then? If we go to the next slide, please. So we've gotten a lot of answers to some of those questions. So we got our Hamilton County retirement assessment. Unfortunately, it was higher than we anticipated. It was almost 13% increase. We got our health insurance rates finalized. That was more modest. It was at 4%. So that helped sort of bottom line as far as our expenses. We got finalized costs for transportation. And I will say about the transportation costs, there's aspects of it that are very well known when they give us those, and there are others that are, they say, here's what we project, however, it's based on usage. So we take that into consideration. So it's like some other parts of our budget where we're making our, experiential guesses, to try to identify what we think the real cost is going to be. So, for example, our, day-to-day bus routes that drive the kids around to school, that one's pretty locked in at what they tell us it's going to be. Other things like our special education transportation, we're trying to make, a fairly educated estimate of what we think we're going to need based on our history and the number of kids we know we have right now that can do the specialized costs and use the sort of per unit costs that they give us to help us estimate those. So it's not perfect, but it did. I will say that with the more finalized numbers, it did help the bottom line as far as reducing some costs. We also, every opportunity to, refine any of the other numbers within the budget, we take. And so there are some other areas of the budget that we know more than we did a few weeks ago. We were able to refine and help out a little bit. We had more information. But the other thing that is included in this that wasn't in the previous slide was some estimate for COLA, and trying to match that up with our sort of good faith bargaining that we're in process. So steps are still in here and an estimate for COLAs, and that includes both union staff COLAs and non-union staff COLAs. So an overall estimate for what we think that cost of living and compensation sort of package is going to look like. And sort of the short story is that has a much more significant impact. And I'll show this in a couple more slides, sort of why that is, since most of our biggest expenses are people. But that results in an overall increase from the current year's budget as far as an assessment to the towns. It goes up about $2.45 million. And that's for level services. That's essentially what we do right now, roll forward a year, some adjustment things we know, like changes in special ed needs or known steps and COLAs and that sort of thing. But it's essentially the same kind of programming we have in our schools this year is what this is. And so you see that's a 6.28% increase, and that's in the assessment to the towns. And it puts our overall assessed budget at 41 million and change to the towns. If you go to the next slide, please.
Before we go to the next slide, can I ask a quick question on transportation?
Yeah.
So I'm looking at this correctly, there's going to be a greater increase in the cost of transportation than we saw last year. But I was kind of hoping it would be less because we're switching to 3 tiers.
Sure, I can speak to that. And I'd like to take you back to the discussions that we had about the late passage of the LPVEC budget. One of the things that concerned me about that at the time was that not only did the budget come in late, but it included a large increase for transportation costs. As you may recall, the LVPEC basically held us harmless to that by giving us a dividend that offset the cost of the increase in year one. But that means this year, we're seeing the full cost of the increase in year one of their contract, plus the additional increase of year two. So going from 3 tiers to 2 tiers blunts the impact of that. But even with that reduction in services, the overall cost is still going up because we're taking 2 years of increase in one chunk, basically.
And speaking of that, with the transportation, I know a lot of parents have been reaching out to me about what's changing in the schedule and such like that. Do we have any information on that we can share with the public?
We're in the process of scheduling a meeting with the principals and LVPEC to try to narrow those timelines. What I can share with the public is we're going to try to make the changes as minimal as possible because we know it's going to be disruptive, especially for elementary families. And also, those original estimates we had were not quite in line with our time and learning requirements, so we have to make some adjustments. But as soon as we get that nailed down, we'll be communicating that.
When you say minimal, are we talking like half an hour, 45 minutes, or are we talking more 5, 10, 15 minutes?
I'm thinking more likely in the range of 15 to 30 minutes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to the next slide, this is more classically how you have seen this part of the budget. So there's certain aspects of what we showed on the last slide that are considered revenue, and so they show up on what's been classically called the colored sheet, which is given to the towns, and it breaks down the sort of minimum local contribution and the amount above the minimum local contribution, the part that's tied directly to transportation, and it sort of breaks it down that way, so what we have here are what are not considered revenue in the offsets. So the offsets are truly things that the state considers sort of money on hand that you're using, so revolving type funds, school choice is considered not a revenue stream, whereas Chapter 70 is, Medicaid is, interest income is. Those are the main things that are different between these two projections. And so I realized this afternoon while preparing to talk to you tonight that the percentage changes are not there. But on the left, for fiscal 25, that increase from fiscal 24 was 2.39%. And for fiscal 26, projected it's 5.69%. So you may want to pencil that into your copy if you want there. But again, this is sort of the classic view to it. It's exactly the same data. So the very top of this chart is exactly like it is on the previous page, although because there's less stuff, it's a little easier to read. It's a little larger. But you see, there's certain areas of the budget that have been impacted more than others. And so, for example, district-wide support, well, that's where we hold insurance for all our employees, retirement assessments are in there. And so that's why, that one is sort of pressed a little higher. It's a little higher than some of the other ones, and it's such a large section of the budget, a higher percentage, again, the bigger number is a pretty big increase in the overall budget in that area, so it's almost $1 million higher than the current year. You see some other things where a particular school sort of bumps up a little higher, like Green Meadows, I think, is showing a little higher. Some of that has to do with closing the Thornton Burgess School, and some things being shifted into Green Meadows, some things not. You know, there's some other things. Some of it's just an artifact of who the staff are this year versus another year, or maybe did we move certain staff, you know, from one place to another that's a little different than what we budgeted in previous year, that type of thing. But again, this is not, you know, this is still very similar to what you have in the previous slide. It's just a sort of classic view to how we do that. But one of the things, if you go to the next slide, please, that's actually in our regional agreement, since, you know, we've been discussing that quite a bit over the last few meetings, is that the budget is supposed to be presented by virtue of these sort of categories or classifications that are framed by the state. So you have really, there's more than I'm showing you. These are the ones we actually have money in. So we have administration, we have instructional services, we have other school services, operation and maintenance of plant, fixed charges, debt, retirement, and service. And then programs with other school systems. There are a couple others in there. We don't have any spending in those areas. One of them is acquisition of new property. We're not doing any of that. We own all the property that we're going to own right now, so there's no charges there. The thing I've done is split salaries and expenses from each other. So you can kind of see how much people cost in each of those. And then sort of percentage changes from 25 to 26. So it's just, again, another way to look at how our costs are distributed throughout the district budget. And if we switch to the next slide, what I've done here is taken what's in that chart and basically for fiscal 26, place it into a pie graph. And what you want to do, I think to read this most easily, is to start at 12 o'clock, and we're going to go clockwise around this. So the very first dark blue is that 2% is administration salaries. And then administration expenses is the next 1% in the light blue. Then that really big green is salaries for instructional services. And then the next small green right next to it that gets us another 2% is the expenses for instructional services. So if you think about what we're trying to do as an organization is to educate people, you'd hope that we're spending most of our money on instruction, which is what you see in that giant green section, is that we're paying people to instruct our kids. And that is inclusive of both regular and special education as far as those instructional services. And then as you go around the pie there, you start to see the size and the importance of things and the weight that they have within our budget. For example, fixed charges, and we'll, in just a second, we'll talk about what's included in fixed charges, but it's things like retirement and insurance. So again, a lot of that is again, employee benefit type stuff. And so anyway, so that's just a bit of a visual about what's making up our budget, where we're asking to spend money, where we do spend money. And a lot of it is, you know, salaries and people expense. If we go to the next slide, I'm just doing it.
Actually, Doug,
Yeah.
what is the total expense? I'd heard the number that was 85% of our budget goes to salaries and salary-related numbers. Is that correct?
It's not quite that high.
What is the number, do you know?
You know, I don't know exactly. I glanced at it a while ago. It was around more like, it's between 75 and 80, I would say. And that's not atypical for schools, but it's you know, it's most where we spend our money.
If you could just get the exact number to us, that'd be appreciated.
Absolutely. But if we go to the next slide, what we have are sort of brief descriptions of what's in each of those classifications. And so administration is kind of what you'd expect it to be, the expenses related to the school committee and the superintendent, myself, our legal costs, district-wide technology sort of things, that sort of stuff. Instructional services, kind of what you expect there, teaching staff, materials, curriculum materials. Other school services, transportation and food and athletics and student activities, those kinds of things. So they're related but not strictly defined as instructional. Operation and maintenance of plant, all the utilities are in that. You know, other things we do around maintenance of our buildings is in that. Fixed charges, that whole section, retirement insurance programs, rental of land and buildings, we don't really have anything there. It says debt service for current loans, that's a short-term borrowing. So if you did it's like a single-year borrowing, so I'm going to borrow money at the beginning of the year, pay back at the end of the year, it would be there. We don't have any of that, but that's in the description. And then it's sort of a bit of a catch-all under fixed charges, but most of that is going to be for things that we have for staff. There's some smaller things, some of our other insurance around property insurance and that is in there as well. Debt retirement service, that's the bonds on this building right here. And the programs for those schools are mostly placements of students out of district. So that helps you kind of, I think sort of getting familiar with that and then going back to the pie chart and start to say, well, where are we expending our resources and on what kinds of things are we spending them on? And it's a helpful construct to sort of see that. And to the last slide, please. So the last slide I have here is just a quick breakdown of the assessments for the towns. And again, this is based on that set of assumptions and projections for costs. So it does include that step and COLA that we're trying to factor there, broken out by the different towns. It doesn't include any of the capital stuff. The capital plan that we put is a separate part of the assessment, but this is just for operating and the one piece to the debt for this building. And so that's that 41,464,824 should tie back to the third slide where we had the increase for the overall increase is 2.45 million. The number right above it is exactly the same as that. So this just paints a bit of a picture, a couple different ways to look at the data and think about how we are categorizing and spending our resources, or how we project we need to spend them, and what areas we need to have them, and how they've changed from last year to this year. So I'm happy to take any questions folks have about where we are at this point and understand.
So do you have the individual town assessment numbers from last year? And a lot of times the number that they harp on when we talk, like if we're going to talk to Wilbraham FinCom, they're gonna harp on what is the change in our assessment from last year.
So
I find that that's the most important number.
Yeah, I don't have it off the top of my head, although the superintendent and I went to the finance committee meeting last night, and they did a bit of quick math. So their increase from last year in Wilbraham, they did the rough calculation of 1.9 million increase over the current year.
Okay.
I can probably do the math on what it is, but I don't know if I want to do that off the top of my head.
No. Knowing the exact correct numbers is what's most important.
Yeah.
Because lots of people do quick math, and
Right.
those numbers aren't always the real numbers.
Yeah.
In fact, they really are.
Oh. That's for you said this is for Hamden?
No, that's Wilbraham.
Oh, this is Wilbraham's.
The operating assessment.
Right, so Wilbraham's total operating assessment is $30,237,234 for fiscal '25.
Say that again, 30 million.
30,237,234. And the one on this sheet is 32,093,573. And so that difference is 1,856,339. Sure. Hamden, on the other hand, for fiscal '25, their number is 8,813,481, and as it stands right now, the new number is 9,371,251. And so their increase is 557,770 from fiscal '25 to fiscal '26. And I will say I did think about putting that, but I didn't want to make this chart too busy, but maybe I should have anyway. So forgive me for that. But sorry.
Doug, when you do your presentation, I would just put the explanation of classifications before you do the 2026 draft maintenance and operating budget by classification chart. I just think it was very, very helpful.
Yeah.
And for them to know that, so what they're looking at, it would be very helpful, I believe.
Yeah.
Just a suggestion.
Don, you're going. If you just want to speak into the microphone, Don.
Sorry. The assessment includes the capital assessments for Minichog?
It includes just the high school, yeah, the debt on this building, it does include that.
The debt, just the debt, not the new capital expenses?
Correct.
Okay.
Right. So I think we do, I almost forgot, we have one more slide. So we do have one more slide, which is about sort of how we compare to surrounding communities on our per pupil expenditure. And so Superintendent put together a nice little map and put some numbers on it for us, and I don't know if you want to kind of walk through this a little bit.
Sure. So, and we did have a little bit of a discussion about this at FinCom last night. So first thing I'll say is that we're looking at FY23 numbers, so we're not up to date with the current budget because it takes a while for the actual amount that was spent by districts to be known and to be certified by the state and reported to the state. But this, I can tell you in FY23, the per pupil expenditure by district across Massachusetts was $21,885. We spent about $3,000 less per student than the statewide average, $18,876 if you take a look at that. And if you look at the map, you see that we are surrounded by districts that are spending more on a per pupil basis than we are, or at least we were in 2023. Now, you know, I think there's lots of ways to look at that. One is that we have some economies of scale that we're taking advantage of. I think that's in part why we're able to spend less than Palmer or Munson. But if you look at some exemplars for us, look at the other regional districts out here, Suffolk, Tallinn, Granville is spending more than we are. New Hampshire is spending more than we are. You look at all of the municipal districts right up and down 91, some of them are spending $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 more per student per year. And so, you know, they are certainly getting a lot more support from the state than we are. They certainly are facing some different challenges than we are. But I think it begs the question, is this fair and is it adequate? And can we continue to provide a high quality of education for our students if we're being outspent by all of our neighbors?
So that was really all I had to say at this moment. So I'm happy to answer any questions people have, and of course, if not, then obviously move on to the agenda.
Or feedback, or, I mean, we've gotten some feedback already, but are you happy with the general directions that's going in? Do you have any suggestions for changes or other adjustments you'd like to see before we present this for a public hearing?
I think the map is good. You know, we need to, I feel like we need the public to raise their hands and say, you know, we need to do a better job keeping up with our neighbors, and, you know, we can't, you know, and you bring up a good point, it's not, you know, it's, we want to see excellence for our students, but, you know, we get what we pay for, right? And so, you know, I think we were, you know, people see things creeping down, you know, it's because we're being, you know, put under such financial pressure. And there's only so much and so far you can go. And, you know, the changes now, we're coming to that part. I'd like to comment some questions about that. You know, we're talking about some really negative, substantial changes that the school district will be facing. in the next year or two, if there's not a change in direction for the funding.
I would add two things to this map. I would add that line that we are approximately $3,000 less per student than the state average. I would put that there, and I would number these. I would have Long Meadow as 1, and then was it West Springfield as 2, and then 3 is Westfield, and then 4 Hampton, Wilbraham, go all the way up to, was it, I think at 14 that you listed here. It just shows that if we're number 4 out of these districts, out of 14, it just shows that we're being very, I would say, frugal, because we're not, you know, we're not underperforming at all for how much we're spending per student. I think we're doing a great job. Of course, there's always room for improvement.
Could I get you back with an idea on that?
Please, please.
I'm thinking of maybe ordering it the other way, because 1 is usually the best. You know,
Okay.
so we're probably number 10 out of 14 in terms of
Sure.
how well we're being supported. And I might add something about achievement, because that's important there. On a lot of the measures of achievement, we're number 2.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we're not going to stay number 2 if we keep getting funded like this.
Right.
I like that idea, John, of those two tables next to each other, because I think sometimes one of the things we hear from FinCom is, what is our return on investment, right? And again, so.
Oh, wait, yeah, do that right, exactly. Have the
You
number.
have the one table that shows where we stand in terms of how much financial support we're receiving or investing in the kids, and then where our kids are standing performance-wise.
Or I would say 2 numbers. Have one number be the number where we stand in how much we spend, and the number where we stand in how high we're rated. I think that'd be great. Just to put in perspective, $3,000 less per student is $9 million, roughly. Just want to throw that out there. 9 million. What could you do with 9 million, John?
Much better
I
job
would-
than we're currently doing.
You got it. Exactly.
And that's my comment. I understand that the financial restraints that both towns are facing. I've sat through Subcommittee a couple of times. But I am disappointed that we're not moving in a direction to get more hands-on learning for our students who stay here in Wilbraham and don't get into a vocational school. I would like to see an expansion of the number of teachers on the elementary level so that we can give remediation without shortchanging them for the art and the music that is a joyous part of many kids' days, and it is interconnected with math and science. So I would like us to start planning budgets to start adding in those areas so we can get a complete and full education, educate the whole child in our schools, not just targeting the kids who are going to go on to college. So that's my concern. I've said it quite publicly several times and will continue to. But I understand our circumstances. We need to push as hard as we can with the towns, with the state, and with the federal government. I don't have a lot of hope right now with the federal government, but I think the state's got to step up and protect the children in our schools the way we are protecting the women with their rights that have been taken away by the Supreme Court. The state is acting to protect the rights of people who are under attack by this federal administration, and our kids are now under attack by this federal administration. I want to see the state start planning to spend some of that extra money that we got in the state coffers to fill the gaps that are going to be coming our way.
And to be clear, I don't think we know in elementary school who's going to college or not. I think that's a decision that happens later. So I don't think we're really targeting college-going students until maybe the high school area. But I think in elementary, we pretty much evenly distribute amongst all students.
Any other questions or comments? Okay.
Thanks for the work you've done in a very short period of time. You've done a real nice job, and the sitcom was pleased with your presentation. They said that after you had left, and they were happy with it, just so you know.
Yeah, Doug, thank you very much.
Okay, we continue with new business. John?
Okay, continuing our discussion of finances, you have in your packet a memo named Financial Uncertainty. In that, I sort of expand on some of the themes that I had brought up at the budget roundtable regarding what's happening at the state level and what's happening at the federal level. As you recall, at the time I said, not because I'm a sage, but just because I am reading the same reports everyone else is, that unless something was done, we were looking at a statewide educational collapse in the current fiscal year. And as of Tuesday, when I drafted this memo, Amherst Regional, Brookline, Belchertown, Cohasset, Hingham, Melrose, Natick, Needham, and Stone had already announced very large budget gaps for FY26. Yesterday, North Middlesex added to the list. And I think if I had written this memo next week, that would have been 2 more lines. If I write it 2 weeks from now, it would be 4 more lines. I think the list is just going to keep growing and growing and growing because we're in a sort of macro unsustainable situation. For us, we talked about the impact of reduced federal funding for us. I think there are 2 things driving this. One is the fact that we haven't had a federal budget in a long time, so we've been working on continuing resolutions, which essentially lock us in at FY23 levels for most government funding. And so there's less money to go around, or the equal money to go around, which is worth less because of increasing needs. And also some changes we've had demographically within our communities, because federal government formulas are based not on the students you have enrolled in your schools, but the residents you have enrolled in your town. Because the thought is, as wealth increases in your town, the amount of federal support you receive could decrease because you have more local capacity to pay for education. And so the net result of that has been that what we're projecting right now, although the state budget process isn't done and the federal budget process, of course, isn't done, there's a potential for a federal government shutdown on March 14th, is that for every $2 of increased state aid we're projecting for next year, we're projecting $1 less of federal aid. So state is putting some money in our coffers, federal is pulling it out, and it's really blunting the efforts that the state is making to try to support us to the extent they can. And so we have developed some potential strategies for dealing with reductions that might be needed. Don't know if any reductions are going to be needed. I surely hope no reductions are going to be needed because, as you saw from the last map, we're already behind in terms of support for the schools. But and I do think that this falls within, squarely within the school committee's budget-making authority. So these are ideas and concepts, but certainly we would welcome feedback. We've looked at, if we did get into a cutting situation, trying to focus on 2 goals. The first is maintaining core academic programs, and the second is maintaining services for students who are most at risk of school failure. As others have mentioned in this meeting already, students who are closest to the margins already are the ones who are most likely to suffer from any kind of reduction in services. And what I'm hearing from families in the community is, while there's concern in general, it's parents of students who are most vulnerable, who are most concerned about what this budget is going to mean for them. So we tried to make cuts that would impact those students as far away as possible. So we also looked at this in a phased way because we don't know what a potential gap might be. And we took it in increments of $162,500. So at the first increment to that amount of what we need and what we're funded at is short by that amount. We'd be looking at not filling a payroll position, which is currently vacant. That, I don't know if will be sustainable for the entire school year. Right now, we have people working very hard in our office to try to deal with the fact that we don't have a payroll person. There are overtime costs associated with that, but there are also, personal costs associated with that, just all the extra work. We looked at reductions in maintenance. I just have to say, we are already 500 work orders behind. So increasing or decreasing that further is a great concern to me. Now, some of that stuff are things that are done during vacations and done during the summer, so a certain amount of backlog is, not necessarily unusual, but 500 is a large number. And thinking about trying to make any dents into that backlog with fewer staff and resources is concerning. We have an instructional coach position that's currently vacant. We would propose not to fill that. That, of course, means reduced support for teachers, especially teachers who are still working on implementing new curriculums. So that's sort of the first level we thought that we would go with, because we're taking advantage of what we can do through attrition in positions that aren't student-facing. If we have another increment bringing us up to $325,000, our next set of proposals would be to eliminate 9th grade athletics, which would mean fewer students participating in athletics. Programs would be less competitive. 9th graders, of course, would lose all the health and social benefits that go along with participating in sports, as well as the academic benefits that go with participating in sports. Eliminating a half-time middle school music teacher, which would result in larger class sizes. One of the things we were planning to bring to you, and actually are planning to do if this position can be maintained, is bringing the strings program into the middle school as a period during the day, so that students don't have to do it after school as they do at the elementary level. I think it would be a real strong step forward for our music program to do that, because that is the feeder for orchestral music at the high school. But if we don't have the funding, that is on the list. Eliminating 4 kindergarten pairs at Mile Tree and Green Meadows. That would make kindergarten pairs shared between 2 classes instead of 1 for each class. It's a position that's technically not needed for any compliance reasons or regulatory reasons, but the hard thing about kindergarten is you never know what you're getting. So it's traditionally been thought wise to put some additional resources in the kindergarten classrooms to sort of buffer the effects of the needs that you may see in the student population. If we get to the next increment, so these are all additive, right? It's like keep doing this and keep going. If we need to cut $487,500, be a reduction of materials and supplies for elementary schools, reduction of 2 registered behavior technicians and replacing them with paraprofessionals. That one in particular is concerning for me because we use our RBTs very judiciously. The 2 that we have are the 2 that exist in the district right now. And these are for the most significant cases, students with the most significant behavioral problems. And we'd say, we'll try to do that with a paraprofessional instead of an RBT. Eliminating the high school to career guidance counselor. This one hurts my heart. I've been working on a innovation career pathway. As you know, my report tonight is going to be about innovation career pathway. We have several local businesses that we've lined up to support our innovation career pathway. We were just notified today we have $35,000 that we need to draw down and spend, and we'll have additional grants that were available in order to implement it. I checked in with the person who has this position today. She said there are about 75 seniors who are already signed up to do work-based learning next year. We say, sorry, you don't get this level of funding. At level 4, which would be $650,000, don't replace any Chromebooks. We've heard already that the Chromebooks don't work. I've seen it myself. We are part of as I told you, a statewide high-dosage math tutoring program that's implemented through Chromebooks. I've been in the classes where that's happened, and I've seen kids running around, you know, trying to get extension cords to go to a charger, to go to their computer, because their computer's so old the battery won't hold a charge anymore, you know. So imagine, and that's only when we were short about $30,000 last year, and we only didn't replace in middle school. Imagine not replacing anywhere. Next.
Can I just ask a clarifying question on table 3?
Sure.
So just the line item, the eliminate high school to career counselor. So you mentioned the work-based learning program. So that's the senior internships where they, the second semester are able to do their work-based learning as well as the new innovative pathway.
Correct.
Program.
They can actually do it both semesters, but yes.
Yeah.
It's all the internships for the seniors plus the pathway.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
If we have to get to $812,000, eliminate an elementary band teacher. That would mean no instrumental music at the elementary level. Also eliminate drama programming in Green Meadows and result in larger class size. Eliminate a middle school related arts teacher. That would be the elimination of the journalism program, larger class sizes and limited class offerings. We need 975. We eliminate full-time equivalent of a high school teacher. The sections and courses would be based on enrollment. Really impossible to tell at this time which courses would be eliminated because it would be based on you know, what students take. And some of the smaller classes would be the ones that would be most likely to be impacted. Also, eliminate the elementary paraprofessionals, which would mean at that point, there are no libraries in the elementary schools. As you know, there's already no library in the middle school because that's overcrowded and it's being used for classroom spaces. So it would mean if we get to this level, our students' first chance to go into a public school library will be in the 10th year of their education when they're 9th graders. Get to table 7, that's a gap of $1,137,500. The elimination of a high school teacher. Again, I'd say full-time equivalent most likely would be parts of different teachers would be reduced, you know, to part-time status based on student enrollment and eliminating the smallest class sizes. Of course, that makes the other class sizes higher. At that point, we'd recommend eliminating the high school library paraprofessional, which would mean not only do you not have a library in K through 8, but you also don't have a library open all the time at the high school. Whenever the librarian is teaching a class or whenever the librarian is at lunch, this place would be closed. Table 8, which is thankfully our final table, if the gap was $1.3 million, we would eliminate 5 educational team leaders, replace them with 2 central supervisors. The impact of that really would be that special education teachers would be spending more time on paperwork and less time delivering direct services to students. I can tell you, as a former special education director, the largest concern year after year after year for special education teachers was the amount of paperwork involved and how it takes them away from their students. Which is why we put this in table 8, trying to keep that cut, you know, as far away as possible. But that's where we would be if we had a gap of that size, and if that's what you thought we should do.
John, was this presented last night to Wilbraham FinCom?
It was not. We did note that we had some contingencies in place in case the funding was not equal to what we needed, but we did not share this in detail.
Can you briefly share how this list was created?
Sure. This was created in 2 rounds by the district leadership team, so principals and directors. We had one version of this that we did during our last snow day, a Zoom meeting. And then we sort of let that sit for a couple of weeks and then thought about it and went back to it. We did find a couple of other potential cost-cutting measures that allowed us to save some things that were on that original list. But, you know, and we also sort of refined our priorities for the second time around. Our goal is always to maintain core academic programs, but I think we sharpened our focus around wanting to maintain services for students most at risk. And we also looked at some of the tables that we originally developed, and it seemed like some of the early tables were really secondary heavy. So we tried to make it so that in each level, there were things that sort of touched on all of the different levels, so that one level of education wouldn't be disproportionately impacted if we end up somewhere, you know, halfway down this list or portion down this list. I really don't think we can go beyond table 1 without any kind of really significant impacts. I mean, if you get to table 1, 2, 3, 4, I think you're talking years to get back to where we are now.
Thank you. Any other comments or discussion?
Yeah, I'm looking at this, and all the progress that you've made since you've been here is going to be lost. And we're going to be moving in the wrong direction. And our kids are going to lose out on this.
I find the list absolutely devastating, personally. When I look at the things here and look at, you know, how it will impact, you know, I think about my own kids and their friends, and, you know, almost every item on that list. I know someone that will be impacted. I know a kid in the district who will be impacted. It's just absolutely devastating.
You know, unfortunately, I think people see this list and they're like, they're just bluffing. They're just trying to scare everyone. They're just trying to, you know, I don't know, get us to give them the money or whatever. And it's like, that money that we didn't get last year for the Chromebooks definitely affected, because my son's in middle school and he spends about half an hour a day trying to get his damn Chromebook to work. You know, we have discussions daily on the new thing that's going on with this Chromebook. So it's hitting, these are real, and I don't know, that losing that halftime middle school music teacher, you know, everything I've been reading up lately on the benefits of having music at younger ages and the wiring it does in your brain and how it helps you and changes you. It's, I know someone that had started taking guitar lessons later in life, and they said they can almost taste the music. I mean, it just makes so many beautiful connections in the brain that you need moving forward in life. This would be horrible. This would be terrible. This would be devastating.
I guess I'll echo what you said, Sean, in regards to music. That's something that's always been very close to me. And you know, one of the drivers for me coming to the committee was I wanted to see us improving our music program. You know, because I mean, you know, our string students, you know, really are educated outside the school system until they, you know, get farther on in their education. So I'm only one vote, but I don't think I would ever personally vote for any budget number that would involve any cut to music. So now I'm only one vote, and I could go no, and everybody else could go no. But it's, you know, that's a line I won't personally cross.
What else do we cut? I mean, what else is there to cut?
I'm just telling you what I know. No budget, no anything.
There are obviously no good decisions to be made in these pages. But I would say this, and there are studies that have shown it, and I've seen it in the city of Springfield, when you have a top-notch band organization in a school, test scores across the board go up. And there are national studies that show that. And I'm sure a lot of the stuff that we're not giving these kids in terms of drama, in terms of, you know, joyful things that involve learning and interconnection of the academics, it makes the day go by much better for kids. And if kids are unhappy and frustrated, you just think about it. If on your job, there was a portion of your job that you really disliked the most, and the boss came in and said, I'm going to take away this part of your job, which is what you really like to do, and give you more of this, it wouldn't make you a happy camper. And that's the same with our students. You know, they need to have a chance to shine during the day.
And let's just take it a step further. I mean, I didn't mean to stomp on Dan, but, you know, the school to career counselor, you know, you have those 75 seniors that have signed up for work-based learning that won't get it. Again, the Chromebooks, we have that journalism at the middle school. I just read a bunch of those articles. I was really proud of the middle school students. They were really just well-researched, well-written. It was amazing. Again, band, and then all the paraprofessionals, the high school teachers, the librarians. I mean, I think we've all been talking about going in the other direction of getting more librarians. Let's open up the library. The library is where students go themselves and they, hey, you know, something I'm interested in, and that's when they figure it out. So I wish there were. I wish this was a made-up list. I wish this was something that wouldn't really happen, but it's not.
I think as school committee members, I'm pretty sure we're all in agreement that there's not any cut that we're comfortable making. Our goal is always to make sure that we are elevating our district and enhancing the opportunities for our students, and this does the exact opposite. So it would be detrimental to our students, you know, therefore to families and to our district.
You're here.
I was just echoing the same thing everybody else was saying. District is basically an ecosystem, and even the bare minimum of taking, I don't know, a general reduction is a huge effect on the rest of the ecosystem. So none of it is acceptable to me.
Okay, well, now is time for public comment. So if there's anyone here that is interested in making public comment this evening, if you could please come to the microphone, please state your name, your affiliation with the district, and just make sure that you press the button and you see the green light.
Hi, Karen Romano. I have 4 children in the district, 2 at the middle school and 2 at Stony Hill. I was not planning on making public comment tonight until this discussion occurred. But when you're looking at accounting, you look at what's coming in and what's going out. We have a sense of what's going out. We have a sense of what's coming in. The question is, can we get creative and find other ways to get more money to come in? Clearly, if we're losing money from the federal funds, we're losing money from state funds, there's only so much that we can tax the residents, and certainly that they'll agree to be taxed. So the question is what kind of discussions are happening? What kind of discussions can we have about where there are other revenue sources? Whether it's grants, whether it's fundraising, like what can we do? And what if we put this out to the families of the town and to the citizens, and we say, look, this is what's going to happen if we don't find funds? I feel like there would be a large group of people that would be happy to sit down and brainstorm and come up with ideas on how we get more money to filter into the district. And so I think that in addition to trying to get creative on how we find cuts that none of us want, but that will maybe impact us the least, we also need to figure out on what can we actively do to make sure that we're getting money in to try to shore up some of these problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that's interested in making public comment this evening? Okay, thank you. We will continue with subcommittee updates. Curriculum subcommittee, Lisa? I'm sorry.
I would like to make a comment after listening to that. And, there are things we can do, and people who are watching at home can do. You can phone, visit, your rep, your senator. Christine Goonan, who does work for the MTA, is one of our 2 senatorial coordinators here in Hampden County. And on the 12th of March, she has invited both senators and all the reps in Hampden County to come to a meeting and hear from teachers and parents and superintendents and school committee members, anybody who can show up. We have a bargaining session that day. I have a good relationship with a lot of those guys. I might want to teeth here and kind of put the pressure on them and twist their arms a little bit. But we need to push our representatives on the statewide basis. And the superintendent has told us it was 211 communities that were in the same shape we're in now. It's 230. That's more than 2/3 of the school districts in this Commonwealth that don't have the resources to give their kids the kind of education they deserve. So we got to spread that word and get people who care about quality education, who see the value of it in making a town or a city a place where people want to live.
Great. So that meeting was Tuesday, March 12th, 4 o'clock, 16 Acres Library in Springfield. It's the library on Pepper Street. Okay, so we will continue with subcommittee updates. So curriculum subcommittee?
No.
Okay. Planning committee, I have nothing to report at this time, although we do have a meeting on Tuesday, Tuesday, March 4th at 6 o'clock in the district conference room. Finance operations technology subcommittee, Sean?
Yeah, we have no updates at this time, but isn't there, Monday? We have 2 meetings, one in Wilbraham and one in Hampden.
Correct. So at 6:15, we'll be with Hampden Advisory at the Hampden Townhouse. And then at 7 o'clock, we'll be on Zoom with Wilbraham Capital. And that'll begin at 7 p.m. We'll move on to the LPVET Collaborative Representative, Lisa.
Nope.
Negotiation Subcommittee, nothing to report at this time. We'll move on to the Policy Subcommittee, Mike.
Hey guys, so this is the 3rd reading, and it's amenable. I'll be looking for a motion to approve. IKF, graduation requirements.
Make a motion to accept the graduation requirement IKF amendment to the policy.
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes.
And if I may just comment on it, isn't part of this that we might have to amend this again soon?
Yes.
Right.
Who knows? But yes, there have been drafts of changes, additional changes to state policies. But it is the routine of the policy subcommittee every year to go through and amend and change policies as they need to be changed to keep up with the changes at the state level and federal level. And when or if that's necessary, we shall continue to do our duty.
Thank you, sir.
Do you have another policy subcommittee plan? Meeting?
I don't think we have one planned right now.
Okay, that's okay, no pressure.
But we don't have.
Just thought
We don't have
for the
it.
record.
We currently don't have the need for one, so we're not going to meet just for fun. So, but yeah.
Okay, do you have anything for the LPVET Corporation representative?
No.
Okay, great. So we'll move on to the consent agenda.
I make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries 5-0. So now we will move on to the superintendent's update.
Thank you. I really appreciate being able to give my report tonight because I want to end on a happy note. I want to be thinking about a future where there are no gaps. I want to be thinking about a future where we get this figured out so that students can get what they deserve. And along the lines of creative ways of getting money, I can tell you that we just received notification from the state that we have $35,000 more that we can spend towards our innovation career pathway planning. So in your packet, you will find our application for designation to operate an innovation career pathway in healthcare and social assistance. Developing this application and transmitting it by the February 7th deadline has been a significant focus of my work this year and will continue to be so if we obtain a designation, which I strongly feel we will. As you know, this initiative has become a key strategy for implementing the fourth broad goal of our strategic plan, which has to do with optimizing our built environments for learning, because it will allow us to bring students who join the pathway to Minnetonka during their 8th grade year, thereby alleviating some of the overcrowding at the middle school. I think it also addresses another component of the strategic plan, which calls upon us to establish a coalition to engage business partners to support our school. Directing your attention to Appendix J of the application, you'll see that we've developed a memoranda of understanding between our district and Bay State Medical Center, Trinity Health of New England, the Regional Workforce Development Board, Mass Hire, Springfield District Court, ATI Physical Therapy, Hamden Veterinary Clinic, Lewis and Clark Pharmacy, Pediatric Dental Associates, and the Wilbraham Fire Department. We've also signed a memorandum of agreement with Springfield Technical Community College, which will be our higher ed partner for the Pathway program. Through the program, we plan to provide students with a rigorous academic foundation aligned with Mass core requirements, including a deep exposure to scientific and psychological or sociological concepts that are relevant to the healthcare and social assistance sector, expose students to real-world healthcare and social assistance settings through both structured internships and experiences. I can tell you this is currently happening through our current work-based learning program. I had to get some physical therapy yesterday, and I ran into one of my students there. So we made a deal that I would do my homework if he does this, so hopefully we'll both be in a better position. Thirdly, to prepare our students for success in post-secondary education, particularly in health science and social assistance-related programs, to equip students with the skills and knowledge necessary for entry-level positions in healthcare and social assistance fields, to provide opportunities for career exploration within healthcare and social assistance sector, allowing students to make informed decisions about their future, and developing students' professional networks through interactions with potential employers and higher ed faculty. The committee has often discussed what the future of education might look like, and I think this is one possible answer. The tagline for those of us working in the innovation pathway space is to, quote, reimagine high school, unquote. And for me, it's really about increasing student voice and choice. As any secondary teacher knows, one of the most commonly asked questions in any classroom, regardless of content, is, why do we have to learn this? It's a fair question, and teachers need to be prepared with really good answers. Answers like, you're going to see this on MCAS or SAT or the AP test, are not so great. A much better answer will be that we'll soon be able to provide is, you're in this class because of your interest in healthcare or social assistance, and we're teaching you the things you'll need to know in order to succeed in the field. Our plan emphasizes equitable access and enhanced student supports. And I entered the discussion of pathways with a clear intention to convey our commitment to supporting all students, particularly those from historically underserved groups. The Pathway program does represent a higher standard. It requires students to take at least 2 advanced courses, 2 technical courses, and 2 courses of the same old language. It requires them to complete a 100-hour internship or capstone project. It requires them to earn industry-recognized credentials through their high school experience. These are all enhancements to our standard graduation requirements, as you know, from the policy you just passed. We feel strongly that when faced with increased demands, our students can rise to the challenge as long as they're given appropriate supports and services. We're not seeking to enroll students with the highest grades or the best test scores. All we're looking for is students who have an interest in exploring the field to figure out if it's right for them. Directing your attention to Appendix D of our application, you'll see sample recruiting materials. And we make it clear that within the sector, there are opportunities for those that want to begin a career immediately after high school, as well as those who may plan to go on to medical or graduate school, and all the jobs that are available at every level of education between those extremes. Finally, I just want to thank the team that helped me bring the project to this point. From Minnechaug High School, Steve Hale, Renee Considine, Elizabeth Goncalves, from STCC, Wesley Carter, who's a Minnechaug alum, and Kelly Godowski. From the Hampton County Workforce Board, Mass Hire, Peter Farkas. From River East, Amy Scrivener. And from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, Joe Wyman. I'd also like to give a shout out to all the members of the advisory committee who helped me to improve the first draft of this application, and will continue to support the pathway once it launches, once we get the funding we need to make it run.
Exciting. Any questions for John? Okay.
Before we go into executive session, could I ask for something to be added to future agenda? I'm giving it a name right now, we can change this, but I'm calling it the Innovative Capital Search Committee. Maybe we get some members of the community and such together and we look at grants and or other ways that we can generate some money to bring into the school district. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Our next meeting is Thursday, March 6th, the next Thursday here in the IOC, beginning at 6 p.m. And this is for the budget hearing. So we do have a need for executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, see Chapter 30A, Section 21A, 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with HWEA or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or the litigating position of the public body and the choice of declares HWEA Unit A, C, and clerical contracts.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so we will do roll call to move to executive session. You will be adjourning from there, so we will not be returning. So we'll begin with Tim?
Yes.
Sean?
Here, yes, aye.
Lisa?
Yes.
Mike?
Yep.
Okay, and myself, aye. So we're now adjourning to executive session, 7:49. Thank you.
Maybe we have a quick biological. Thank you.
We're